Hello, sports fans. It's Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. Welcome to Cleats by Dre. I'm Dre. Let's talk some sports. Whew. Welcome, folks. Well, just like the foliage, it's a changing of the guard episode here on Cleats by Dre. We'll give a triumphant goodbye to our world champion New York Liberty of the WNBA. We'll give a bittersweet farewell to the exiting New York Mets, a wait and see to the World Series advancing New York Yankees, and a bing bong of a hello to the New York Knicks, who kick off their season this week with games at Boston Tuesday night and home to Indiana on Friday. Yeah, this episode's going to go deeper on those Knicks, who I just have not had a chance to really get into with all this delicious playoff baseball that's been going on. I'll give you a bit of a primer to remind you how the Knicks season ended last year, the big-time moves they made in the offseason, and some of the key things I'll be looking for as the season progresses. But first, some words on these aforementioned playoff warriors. The Liberty are champs. Yes. My 2 months of bandwagon fandom. I don't even think it was 2 months, but I'm happy. I'm happy for New York. I'm happy for those WNBA fans. I'm happy for those Liberty fans who have been with them for 28 years potentially. The only original WNBA franchise without a championship. They got one. That Game 5 Sunday night, yeah, I was in and out with the Mets. Honestly, once the Mets were going down, I tuned it over. 67-62, drag them out. Overtime final, defensive battle. Things I'll remember from that game is the role players. Leonie Fibich, my girl, coming through, 13.7 rebounds. And then Nyara Sabali off the bench with also 13 big-time points and 7 rebounds. Isn't it cool when those role players step up in the championship games? You know, this comes with off nights from the Liberty Stars, right? They fought through, though. I mean, Sabrina Ionescu, I sang her flowers earlier in the week, comparing to some of the all-time New York great championship performances. That Game 3, it stands up the way she won it. 5 points, though, in this one, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. You know, she battled. She still had a +4 plus minus, but a 1 for 19 shooting performance. Woof. 1 for 19. That's as bad as I've ever seen. I mean, she was going towards John Stark's level. And even in Game 7 against the Rockets in 94, he was, 3 for 17? I mean, 1 for 19, it gets to the point of, like, you know, I know, you know, her and Kobe Bryant had a really special mentoring relationship. I'm like, I know confidence. Shooters need confidence. But I was like, Sabrina, let's take it easy. But they pulled it out. It was a close one. 5-game series. But what I really enjoyed is just like that view into what a championship looks like for a long downtrodden team. Mets, Knicks, Notre Dame football. That tears of joy, seeing that from the former Liberty great, Teresa Witherspoon on the sidelines. Like something about that, just like, you know, we as sports fans, we love to cross generations. We love seeing our alumni get into it. And then even after the, you know, the title, the fun gimmicks that come with the marketing, the Nike ad I saw going around X about, you know, putting an actual ring, a championship ring on the Statue of Liberty's finger. Just the aura of it. You know, I'm a total bandwagoner to the Liberty. I'll admit it. I just wanted to be close to something a little champion-y. I'll make up a word in New York. I also love watching competitive basketball, so count me in. WNBA next year, I'll be back. But just well done, Liberty. It's fun to see that happen. The highs, the lows, how close they were to being out of it. Way to go. Okay, let's move to the next team. The New York Mets. The Mets are not champs. The Mets bowed out to the Dodgers in 6 games. Another bludgeoning from the Dodgers offense, who kept getting on base. What was the final tally? 42 walks in a 6-game series, 7 walks per game. I'll give my thoughts on the Dodgers Yankees World Series in a bit, but flat out with the Mets, the team they're just not as good as the Dodgers yet. The lineup's not as deep and dangerous, from both sides of the plate. The seeming advantage in the rotation didn't come to fruition, whether the Mets pitchers were gassed or just not good enough. And the Dodgers pitchers, for the most part, outperformed the starters than what we were expecting. In the bullpen, the Dodgers had more high leverage guys also. So honestly, it's kind of a miracle the Mets got 2 of these 6 games. But look, I don't have a ton to say about the Mets that hasn't been said by others. I mean, some great tributes have been out there from Howie Rose, from John Mayer, and the team deserves it. And you've also heard what I've said about this team all along the last few weeks. I really let it all out in my Believe episode back after Pete took down the Brewers. I mean, if you can't be inspired by that, you can't be inspired. It'll be an always memorable season, not just for the silly memes and the silly side tactics, but the way this team embraced the nobody believes in us mentality and pulled together and showed a true chemistry, a true bond that you don't see. You don't see all the time. That's something you don't take for granted, and I hope it endures. I hope that culture, I hope that vibe. The players are going to change. Maybe in the offseason we'll get into a little bit more about what could happen, what I'd like to see happen. But I don't know. I'm a little wordless right now, and it's because I'm full of feelings. I'm full of gratitude for this team in a way that I rarely am. And so I'll just say my lasting memorable experience with these Mets is how this playoff run especially brought me closer to my 7-year-old. I talked about it. And seeing his love blossom for baseball. And seeing him sit down and watch full games with me. Not just for the commercials, but for the players. And, him asking me every time the Mets are up, who's up next? Who's up next? Who's up next? It spilled over to him wanting to play. And even just today, I guess it's going out Tuesday. So on Monday, comes home from school and wants to go play. And we played baseball outside for an hour and 10 minutes while we had sunlight. He beat me 25-2. He pulled a hidden ball trick on me twice. But if I look back and, if you're a parent, you love your kids regardless what they're into. But if this becomes something that me and him have, a little special bond, thanks 2024 Mets. What other gift can sports give us, right? So, an incredible year. Hopefully the start of a run of even deeper moves. But farewell to the Mets for now. Farewell. And lastly and quickly, on to the Bronx Bombers. The possible next New York champs. Good for the Yanks, getting back to the World Series. Again, I said it last time, give them credit. Sure, it was an easier path than maybe the National League had, especially with the Orioles and Astros bowing out. But the Yanks deserved it. The Yanks played the best all year in the American League. They started out hot. They ran into some trouble, but they persevered. They made some good trades. They found their way in the end. Good for this team. In the first time in the World Series since 2009. And the way they won, what incredible games with the Guardians. Give the Guardians credit. But what stones the lineup is showing. I mean, Stanton becoming clutch, continuing the postseason. And then that Juan Soto at bat. Man, that's why you get him, and that's why a lot of teams are going to want him. But that clutch at bat, fighting off the slow stuff, the junk, to get his fastball, clutch extra inning home run. Man, that's fun. And look, this Dodgers-Yankees matchup, it's cool. I mean, it's going to be cool seeing those uniforms on the same field. The most common World Series matchup in history. We haven't had it since 1981, 43 years. It'll be fun. And I'm gonna follow it. I'll comment on it throughout the next couple weeks. I could just be biased because I just saw so much of the Dodgers, though. I have to lean Dodgers in this series. That lineup, the Dodger lineup, again, elite, long, on both sides of the plate, with guys like Tommy Edman doing stuff like he did, Max Muncy, Kike, this kid Pages. I saw them just annihilate a Mets pitching staff that was doing pretty good up until then. And I look at the Yankees starters, Cole, Rodon, Gil, Schmidt. They're going to have trouble. And so you got to hope the Yankees bomb. Hope the Yankees bomb too. But I'm leaning Dodgers in 5, and maybe it's 6. But it's going to be awesome seeing playoff baseball back in the World Series baseball back in the Bronx, games 3, 4, and 5. So I'll be tuning in. I'll be rooting for the Yanks. I want New York to win titles. But this feels Dodgers time again for me. Okay, let's get into those New York Knicks. All right, the New York Knickerbockers. So let's get you ready, right? Tip off Tuesday night against the defending champion Celtics in Boston. Then Friday, they got the Pacers at home. This could be a catch-up. So we'll start with just reviewing how last season ended. Then we'll go through the offseason moves, and then I'll give you a couple things to look out for as the games get going. So right, last year's Knicks. 50-32 record. They fought and clawed to the second seed in the Eastern Conference. They then drew a 76er team in the first round with a healthy Embiid. The Sixers were favored in this series. Well, the Knicks pulled out a hard-fought, well-earned 4-2 series win in that round. They then drew what seemed like a fairly favorable matchup with the 6-seed Pacers in the second round, who had upset Giannis and the Bucks in the first-round series. The Knicks ran out to a 2-0 lead at home. Both games were close, though. It made you feel a little uneasy. They headed back to Indiana, where the Knicks lost a close Game 3, got blown out on Mother's Day in Game 4, came back to the Garden and ran away from the Pacers in Game 5. I was there. It was loud. It was crazy. The Garden was bumping. Back to Indiana, blown out again in Game 6. And then let's say what it is. In Game 7 at home, blown out for a third time in the series. Really an uncompetitive game. Give the Pacers credit. They shot like a ridiculous 70% from the field. They couldn't miss. So a season with such promise and stars aligning in the postseason, the season had ended abruptly, right, with a sour taste in our mouths. That was supposed to be us getting back to the conference finals for the first time since 2000. Indiana took our spot. We're better than them. Look, the reality is we would have been caked by the eventual champion Celtics in those conference finals. Injuries were just too much. Already having lost Julius Randle for the year around February. Mitchell Robinson was lost in the first round versus Philly, which I'll always remind people the dirtiest play by Embiid, where I would have kicked. He should have been kicked out of the game. Should have been suspended. Now Robinson's lost for 2 months. You had OG Anunoby pulling his hamstring in Game 2 of the Pacers series, and then didn't come back until Game 7 when he was, unfortunately, not Willis Reed. He was a Warrior, Anunoby, but he's ineffective and just played a couple minutes. Bogdanovic went down in that Pacers series. He was becoming a depth piece before that. And the last straws were our 48-minute man, Josh Hart, strained his abdomen in Game 6. And even our captain, Jalen Brunson, with a wrist injury in the second half of Game 7. Final nail in the coffin, guys. But hold the thought on those injuries for later also. Look, sour taste or not, it was a really successful season. Definitely building towards something. Had that feeling second straight year in the conference semifinals. And along comes the offseason. And our ever-trustworthy regime of Leon Rose, Brock Aller, and company pushed in all their chips. Here's the biggest moves of the offseason chronologically. First, they lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency to a 3-year, $87 million contract to the Oklahoma City Thunder. iHeart had completely outplayed his 2-year, $16 million contract with the Knicks. Surprise, surprise, other teams were watching too. It does seem like iHeart wanted to stay, and the Knicks wanted him, but Knicks fans should at least take solace that OKC, one of, if not the sharpest organization in the league, thought of Hart as the missing piece in their meteoric rise. And they outbid the Knicks by around $11 to $12 million per year more than what the Knicks were allowed to pay with their situation. So no hard feelings really with iHeart having to go. Next, the Knicks were playing salary cap, first apron, second apron, gymnastics, all offseason to maintain flexibility. So I was actually surprised when they held on to draft picks. And I'll say pleasantly surprised because when this regime picks, especially late in the first round, they pick well. Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride. They've all been serviceable and are valuable trade chips. With the way the depth is trending this year, these guys may actually get a chance to play too, the new ones this year. So this draft was known as a relatively weak one, but I'd say the Knicks came away with some interesting players. At the end of the first round, they took Pacome Dadier, 6'8" swing player from France. He's already shown a smooth feel on offense with and without the ball in the preseason. Also makes for really cool top-tier nickname champ potential. Who's your Dadier? In the second round, early on, they seemingly stole Tyler Kolek, the senior point guard from Marquette, who was uber productive in the Big East in college. And already in the preseason, he put up per 36-minute averages of 22 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, versus just 2 turnovers, and 3.3 made three-pointers. The only other players this preseason to put up 29 and 6 in 36-minute averages, Cade Cunningham, LaMelo Ball, and Dame Lillard. Pretty good group of point guards. With the Kolek pick, my immediate reaction was Rose and Thibodeau saw what TJ, and I almost said Mitch McConnell, did to them in the bench minutes in that Indiana series. And those guys said, I want that. I hope Tyler gets some burn this year so we don't have to overextend Jalen, relieve him of some of the, offense creation responsibilities. Later in the draft, they snagged Kevin McCullough, a big senior guard from Kansas who's still recovering from knee surgery, and big man Ariel Hochporty from Germany. He looked energetic in preseason action, throwing down ferocious dunks with the left hand, looking a little bit like iHeart. Now, shortly after the draft, blockbuster number 1 happened, in which they cashed in their treasure trove of accumulated first-round picks to the Crosstown Nets. 5 picks in total for new Nova Knick Mikal Bridges. I didn't love the deal at the announcement, I'll be honest. I wasn't overly familiar with Bridges' game. I know he was a strong role player in Phoenix to a team that was 2 wins from the title. I know the Nets obviously valued him highly as they took him as a centerpiece in the Durant trade. I felt better about this trade, though, when as I read about it, I came to realize that there was a limiting value on those draft picks. Big stars were just not becoming available for trade, consistently re-upping where they were. And a window doesn't last forever. Hate to say it, Jalen Brunson will get old at some point. Josh Hart will not be as spry and Dennis Rodman like forever. Cash the picks in now. Announce a title window. And that's what they did. Now some key re-signings and extensions happen around this time. First, OG Anunoby re-signed for a big contract. His defensive tenacity and team play and spacing on offense really catapulted this team last year after his acquisition. And the captain, Jalen Brunson, still with a year left on his contract, re-upped as well. We covered this on one of our earlier podcast episodes. He took a huge discount, signing his extension a year early, cementing his status as the current prince of New York sports. Moving along, the team was taking form, with the front office making some depth signings. Then news came out in September that Mitchell Robinson will miss at least the first couple of months of the season, still recovering from that dirty injury caused by Embiid. With no more Hartenstein, did we really think this team would go into the first 20 to 25 games of the season with Randall as a starting center? And that's when the big bombshell of a trade came through. The Knicks, seemingly after the big man, 9-year vet from Minnesota, Karl-Anthony Towns, seemingly after him for years, finally got Minnesota to budge. It cost, though, not just Julius Randle, but also Nova Nick, single-season all-time franchise three-point leader Dante DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick. Quite the shocking push that chips into the middle trade. And look, Towns is incredibly skillful, one of the best three-point shooting big men in the league, one of the best rebounding big men in the league, period. And by all accounts, he was very much a missing piece on this roster. But we also need to eulogize what Randle and DiVincenzo meant to this franchise. DiVincenzo first. It hurts to see a player of his caliber go, with the chemistry he had with his core, with the passion with which he played, the three-point shooting and spread that he showed. It could be recency effect, but that's one of the best, maybe the best, one-year career a Knick has ever had. And especially with the key kind of joy-inducing playoff moment, right? The double-bang 6-point possession versus Philly in Game 2. He'll always be remembered here. I hope he comes back at some point. So thank you, Dante. But now on to Randle, because Julius did what only Omari Stoudemire could half do. Julius was part of a free agency signing flurry under former Knicks president Steve Mills that looked embarrassing at the time compared to what the Brooklyn Nets did in 2019 as they brought over Durant and Kyrie. The other guys that Knicks signed in that flurry in 2019, besides Randle, Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson, Elfrid Payton, Reggie Bullock, Wayne Ellington, Marcus Morris Sr. That was the haul. That's what we were sold. It was ugly. 21-45 that year. During the season, 2019, Leon Rose was brought on as president. Glorious, glorious day. To everyone's credit, Randle's especially, Randle flourished the next year in 2020-2021 under Tibbs, leading the Knicks to a 41-31 record and a number 4 seed. Truly with all NBA level play. He averaged 24, 10, and 6, shooting 41% from 3. It was rocky for the next few years after that. Injuries, inconsistent play, especially in the playoffs. Frustrations bowling over to the fans. But in 2023-2024, with the Anunoby trade, things were clicking for that team. Randle included. January and February. Things were clicking for the team. 12 wins in 14 games. But then Randle got injured versus the Heat. He had to watch the rest of the year from the bench. By all appearances, Julius loved New York. You'd always see his family at the Garden, and you'd always see him taking his boy to Mets games, Yankees games, the U.S. Open. A local philanthropist, he would consistently donate to the local New York schools. I'll always be thankful for Julius's time as a Knick. And look, trades happen. It's a business. It's about winning. Competition is cutthroat. The Knicks didn't want to trade Jew or Dante, but Karl Anthony Towns is a prize. He theoretically raises this team's ceiling. So here we are, Knicks fans, at the start of the 2024-2025 NBA season, opening against the defending champion Celtics Tuesday night. The consensus of the books has the Knicks projected for 53 to 54 wins, and they have the third strongest championship odds in the league, behind the Celtics and the Thunder. That's it. The Knicks are anywhere from plus 750 to plus 800, which really, if you think about it, is about 12 to 14% chance of winning the title. Wow. Compare that just to last season, right? They were plus 5,000 preseason to win the title, about 2% odds. So now that we've caught you up, let me give you, let's say, four thoughts. Four thoughts as to what to look for this season, one positive thing, and three wait and sees. First, positive. The early returns on the Brunson-Cat pairing are strong. I know it's just a preseason, but this has become a very important preseason for a newly meshed Knicks team. And the team knew it too. Some stats I saw that Brunson and Cat ran 68 pick and rolls during the preseason, by far the most in the NBA. No other pair of teammates ran more than 42. And the points per possession on those pick and rolls, per Tommy Beer on X, 1.32, which is very, very good. This is so important. This is what you want to see. This is why the trade was made. The Knicks have a prime window with an elite shot creator in the NBA, and they now have a big offensive weapon in which they already seem to be syncing up well with. There's still going to be growing pains. They got to figure this out. This is not Malone and Stockton yet, but good early returns. To the wait and sees. Number 2, how will the other pieces fit on offense? As Brunson and Cat figure that action out, you then have Hart, Anunoby, and Bridges figuring out how to play off that. And this area is going to take some time to come through. Hart is on the record as saying he feels lost on offense right now in the preseason. Doesn't know where to be, how to play off the other guys. Suggesting he should maybe head to the bench and play with that unit. His positioning in action will be critical, as he's the one who teams will cheat off of to help elsewhere. Then with Bridges, he has to be at minimum the 3-and-D player he was in Phoenix. Oh, he shot 2 for 19 from 3 in the preseason. Yeah, it's just a preseason. But I saw some Twitter shot analysts noticing a hitch in his jumper. Just something to monitor for this team's ultimate form to come together. Next, wait and see. How will the defense come together? There's a promise here. We're 2 through 4 in this lineup, a switching nightmare for teams. OG, McCall, Hart, length, effort, and tenacity. Lots of deflections. I can't wait. We know about Brunson's limitations on D, and you can maybe hide a point guard. But Cat, what can Thibs get out of Karl Anthony Towns on defense? This team the last few years has had Mitch and Hartenstein protecting the basket beautifully. Cat hasn't had to do that in a few years playing next to the Stifle Tower in Minnesota. And Cat has also been known to be extremely foul prone. It's why Mitchell Robinson remains such an important player once 2025 rolls around, and why I could see some Cat-Mitch minutes together when that comes. The last wait and see, my biggest one, it's health and really load management. We started this episode with how a promising Knicks team last year just broke down over the course of the year. And now with a seemingly improved starting 5, there's even less depth than last year's team. With Robinson and Achua already out for at least the first couple of months, Precious is to be reevaluated in 2 weeks with his hamstring, so it could easily be more than that. We've got a bench rotation to start where the only veterans are Deuce McBride, Cameron Payne, Jericho Sims, and then those rookies I mentioned. This is an 82-game season, guys, with potential for a 26-game playoffs. And our head coach, lovable Tibbs, with perceived depth issues, I can't see him welcoming any kind of load managing at all. Throw in that one of the biggest questions on Anunoby all along was his ability to stay healthy. I just really worry this whole thing has the potential of falling down because of injuries. Because the players getting worn out. One positive indicator, 3 big crucial wait and sees. Projecting out this season, given how these parts are all new, despite 3 of the main pieces playing together in college, it really should be expected for growing pains from the Knicks. But if I looked around the East, right, Boston remains a juggernaut. Everyone's back. Everyone's re-upped. And they're probably still hungry after the slights Tatum got during the Olympics. Brown didn't even make the Olympics team. They're probably still hungry and disrespected. There's not much else too scary in the East, though. Philly, They picked up Paul George. They'll have some growing pains, though, meshing those pieces together. Cleveland and Orlando are on the rise, but are they really scary yet? Indiana arrived with a run, but you kind of know who they are. Milwaukee may have one last hurrah with Giannis and some of the veterans. Miami always touts their Heat culture. They haven't gotten considerably better. So, it's not like there's a ton of competition in the East. I see growing pains, though, coming. And I could really see this team at around 500 through the end of the calendar year 2024. Then maybe picking up some steam towards the end of the year, settle right back in that 48 to 50 win mark that they were last year. And if they're healthy, I see no reason they can't take that next rung on the ladder to the conference finals. Given that, besides Boston, not a lot to be scared about. But if they're not healthy, if injuries had that compounding effect like last year, could be first round exit time. But look, it's an incredible time to be a Knicks fan. Just looking back at those players they were signing in 2019 and the doldrum years before that, this organization has achieved such a level of competency and stability and acquired talent. Nothing but excitement ahead. It's good to have basketball back. Sit back, enjoy the ride. All right, Cleats by Dre listeners, thanks for listening to another episode. Please, if you like this episode, you know any Knicks fans out there who are waiting for some content, I'll be talking about them throughout this year. Share this episode to get them kicked off. I would love to hear from you. Find me on X, find me on Instagram. Take care, folks. Have a great week.